All right, we want to welcome everybody that's here, and it's great to see everyone, and it's great to have with us today. We've got Jim Carroll. He's an expert in SEO, and some months ago I asked him to help me with getting, hold on a minute, there we go. So I asked him to teach people how to do SEO themselves, and so he agreed to do that, and so he's doing 6 different programs. Today is number 4, and it's going to be mostly about backlinks, is from what I understand, and which is something that a lot of people go, what are backlinks? How do you do that? And so Jim's going to talk about that today. Jim's my good friend, and I appreciate having him here, so I'm going to turn the time over to you.
Thank you, Boyd. I appreciate the opportunity, and I love teaching this stuff. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here in just a second, and we'll get underway. So today's presentation is obviously it's presentation number 4 of 6. So we're really into the meat of things. It's all about SEO. It's all about how to do SEO yourself. So it's do-it-yourself SEO. I'm Jim Carroll. I'm owner of a company called E2 Total Solutions. We are a full-service search engine optimization and marketing firm here in Salt Lake City, and we do have clients all over the country and even the world. So I humbled here in Salt Lake City, but I love doing it. Today's class, of course, is taught in conjunction with E2 Total Solutions and BP Media, and then sponsored by SEO and 360, Reputation Revolution, Bank Code, and a new company called My Local Pro, which is a up-and-coming company. It's a new website that's just being released, and you're going to hear a lot more about that in the very near future. For now, just be aware that part of what we do. So last week, we learned a lot about the sections. I think it was whatever it was, 24 through 36 of my checklist of 70 different items. And so we're really starting to put all the pieces together when it comes to optimization. Today we're going to talk at great length about link building, and that's a really misunderstood part of social media, or not social media, but excuse me, SEO. And it does flow over into the social media realm as well. So links, we want to link all of our components together that make a good website. So we're going to start to see how that all actually works. So the class that Boyd and I discussed, we were honestly sitting together having a cup of coffee. I was at least having coffee. I don't know if Boyd was drinking. But we're talking about how many signals there are to monitor inside of a good optimization campaign. And I threw out a number. Gee, there's 200, easily 200, and probably more like 250 markers that we can check. We don't check them all, but we don't have that much time. But those are things that we can check. And he says, well, what's the minimum number? And I said, maybe 70 or something. So he kind of challenged me a little bit, and we came up with Jim's top 70. So this is a list of the top 70 things that we do. We do monitor pretty much in an optimization campaign. I like in my presentations, they're pretty graphically rich, and I like to also mix in a lot of different knowledge. So every week on this particular slide, I actually have been switching it up. Last week it was a spider being sucked into a black hole, which was very indicative of last week. But this week, I've got a picture, a graphic that represents a internet. And right now, the internet is run with modular computers that basically run, with the programming language is basically a 1 or a 0. And quantum computing is coming to light. And you guys have all heard me talk about that at length, and how valuable and how fast quantum computing is. Every one of these little nodules, if you think about them here, In today's environment, that would be represented by either a 1 or a 0. The difference in quantum computing is that every one of those little nodules has an infinite number of numbers. So it's not a 1 or a 0, it's an infinite number of possibilities, which makes the computing capacity unbelievably fast. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but I want you to start to think that we're going to hear a lot about quantum computing and quibs as we move into the future. Quib is the measurement tool that we're talking about when we talk about quantum computing, and how many different quibs we have that are doing that calculation. It's been reported that about, I guess it was last November, one of the big colleges did solved a problem, a mathematical formula. They figured a conventional computer would have taken about 10,000 years for it to resolve. It did it in about 2 minutes. So that's how much faster a quantum computer is. That's the direction that we're going. We've already started to build quantum network and quantum internet. So the capacity, the knowledge, the movement of information that happens today will be microscopic compared to what we're capable of in the future. So just be aware of that. It's very, very exciting to me, and it's fun. So we've asked this question, what is a search engine? What is SEO? All kind of through this process. And what is actually a search engine? And how does it really work? Well, a search engine is nothing more than a computer software program. And that software program works on a variety of different levels. It's designed specifically to run queries inside of the World Wide Web. There's intra-network, or there's intro networks and extra networks, if you'll think of them that way, internal and external. If you belong to a company like Fujifilm, for example, they have an intranet that stays inside of their company and just performs searches. Most of those are not they're called Boolean searches, and I'll talk about that on the next slide. But they're very, very specific. They're literal search engines. So if you're looking inside of the Fuji intranet, that they're going to talk about products. So you might be looking for Fujifilm or Fuji plates, or a Fuji printing press, or a Fuji film processor, whatever that is. But they're all literal. You look for them by the part number, by whatever, and it delivers it. The Boolean searches tend to work a little bit differently. The one thing that I want to point out is that a search engine, there's a variety of them, and at last count, I think that just the Boolean searches, or the ones that are available on the web, probably is around 150. Those are ones that are just reputable, and there might be some Bob in the basement ones that nobody knows about. 150 are realistic. When you think about it, here's that slide I think I pulled up. I asked for what are the top 10 search engines, and when I was looking on Google for some information about this presentation today, and Google, of course, is the only search engine that I could care about. All the others, Bing and Ask and Yahoo and AOL and Index and Do and Godo, which is a local one that's kind of come to light recently, they all fight for about just over 10% of the market. Google controls 90% of the market. That's 90% of all the searches done on the web worldwide every day. So they have no competitors. They crush their competition. We're going to talk a little bit about how they accomplish that goal, and maybe even if I have time, I might foray a little bit into actually how they make their money.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I also understood that YouTube is part of that.
It is. That's where I'm going next.
Oh, see, I'm trying to lead you into it.
Yes. So this is, thanks for the lead-in, Boyd. So this is a kind of a graphic that represents all of the search engines in the world. And so you can see Google is a dominant force, but the little red icon that you see down here, that represents YouTube. And so between those two, they're controlling 90% of the searches. And this is fascinating to me. But of the 12 to 18-year-old age group, 100% of them search something on YouTube every single week. So if you're looking for an up and coming market that you need to appeal to, or that you want to develop your business to cater to, 100% of that age group go to YouTube for information. That's mind-numbing from a marketing perspective when you start to think about it. Where they get their information, where they're consuming their information, where they can be led or misled, where they can develop an opinion about a product, or whether good or bad. YouTube is an unbelievably powerful mechanism and machine if they have that much control over the young population or the up-and-coming consumers. Facebook, of course, is number 3, and they're just the gorilla in the room. I don't know how else to describe them. I always call them that. And Google, they're so big that Google does, in fact, pay some credibility to them, some credence to them as far as reviews and one of the things that happened there. Facebook's become a search engine. At one time, it really wasn't that way, but now they've changed their algorithm a bit, and Boyd can elaborate on this more. You can search Facebook for very specific topics. It's developed into a search engine. It really didn't start out that way. The one thing that I'd mentioned before is the Boolean type of search engine is a search engine where you can put, it's not literal. You can put in words like and not or searches are become, where they used to be one-word searches. Today, the average search is between 4 and 5 words. You might put in, what is a Boolean search engine? So our search criteria has become much, much longer, and we have to get better at that, or better, the search engines have to really digest our information. This slide has been the same slide in every one of the presentations. I can rest assured that it will be in the next 2 as well. That is the mission statement for Google. Google says their mission statement is to organize all of the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So there's a lot of information, in that very short mission statement, there's a lot of things that are going on. I'm not saying they want to organize some of the world's information or a little bit of the information or just the English speaking information. They're going to organize all of the world's information and make it universally accessible, which they have some initiatives that they're making the internet accessible to everybody and useful. So if you put something up that's kind of frivolous and not relevant and not real, Google's not going to consider that universally useful. So when you start to think about why sites rank or don't rank, think about this mission statement. Their mission is to organize all the information and then make it accessible and useful if it's relevant. So that's a great quote, and I'll stick with it for a while. This slide also stays the same. It's just so that we can get a clear picture on what we're talking about. We've spoken a great deal about on-site content and meta descriptions and fresh content. In fact, fresh content is going to be our tip of the day today. But all of this is mechanics of what it is that I do and I've been doing for many, many years. Back in the day, it used to be really easy to rank a website, first of all, because nobody else bothered to correct any of this information to optimize their website. Today, it's become kind of complex. Social media, just adding the advent of social media to it now, Google has to pay attention to what happens on social media, the reviews that happen on social media, platforms they're on social media. Google actually checks about 70 different directory listings every single month to make sure that there's continuity across that platform or all of those platforms. A few years back, I moved from Heber to Farmington. I had a couple addresses in Farmington and moved back to Heber and had a couple addresses in Heber before I bought a place. And so I had all these different addresses. Well, that's very, very confusing. So I had to go and put my own company and my own software and correct all those directory listings. Now they're all correct and they're all live and they all exist. So that was something important for my company to continue to rank, because it does rank, by the way. But that's how it all started to happen. And the thing that we're going to focus on a little tiny bit, you'll see this graphic a little bit later on, is in fact link building. And link building is at the core of a good search engine optimization program. So we'll talk about that in a second. So the first thing, these are the first 12 steps that we talked about in episode number 1. And you can see that we talk a lot about structure and terminology, you know, just having a good understanding. Next thing that we did is we talked about organizing that information a little tiny bit, and you know, having XML sitemaps and how to get rid of or optimize your 404 redirects and 302 redirects and all kinds of stuff that goes on inside of the website itself. 26 through 38 last week, or 2 weeks ago, excuse me, we talked about some kind of mushy stuff, you know, how to beautify your text. And it's not so much beautifying it, making it so pretty for you to read. We want to make it organized and pretty for the search engines to crawl. And you guys have all heard about spiders, and they go out and crawl all these crazy things. And that's really how a search engine works. Well, it has to be organized to the point where a search engine can consume it. And we talked about, you know, having the week before that, we talked about having an XML sitemap, organizing that information, structure. Then we started to worry a little bit about beautifying it. That's where we got where we are today. So this is steps 39 through 52. And I'm not one who likes to read a lot of stuff. This is kind of the premise of the whole rest of the presentation. So we want to optimize videos. We want to have sitemaps for our videos. We want to optimize titles for categories, which is a little bit different than what we've talked about before. We need to check our internal linking, give credit to other sites, understand SEO keywords. We're going to understand the keywords, short and long tail. We're going to learn how to perform a keyword research, and then how to optimize for the best keywords. And they're not going to be the ones that you think they might be. Learning what a link is and why they're important. Learn the basic concepts of building a link, how to get high linking authority, or why you should link to other websites, and review your link profile. And then, of course, this is the odd man out, but mathematically it fell in today's group. That is how to optimize your logo for SEO Local. So today's bonus, we're going to also talk about what the heck is link building. So it gets crazy, and we're going to jump into it. So historically, we talked about a couple of different things that affect optimization. Market research was one of them. On-page SEO was certainly one of them. We went on to off-page factors. It's kind of impressive that, you know, we start with a little bit of research. You talk about, you know, is my product needed? Is there a niche for it? We talk about some on-page SEO. And then we get to this big category of off-page SEO. Look at all of the things, you know, on a percentage-wise, how many things are on-page versus off-page SEO. It's pretty impressive the number of things that Google takes into account when considering how to rank a website. And you know, there's all kinds of links and other things that happen up in here, and stuff that we need to be concerned about. Today I added in everything else, and social media happens to fall into that category, but it's a full 1/3 of my puzzle. When you saw that pie chart a moment ago, social media today is a full 1/3 of the puzzle. And Google, by the way, can see images. And there's been a lot of discussion over the most recent few years whether or not they can. And I can prove to you quite simply that they do. If you do a search for any type of dog, I happen to have L count. And so you search for L counts. Well, of the top 100 results that are delivered, a high percentage of them, I'm going to say 99%, are going to be L counts. And so you have to say, okay, well, Google understands that. And then you say L count puppies. And then it changes the search results, L counts, and most of the pictures, you know, in excess of 90% are in fact puppies. Then what we did is, after we did the search for L counts and then search for L count puppies, then we went in and looked at the meta description on every single one of those top 100 results. And fewer than 20% of those images actually had meta description that identified it as a puppy. So Google was actually making a distinction between what a puppy was, what a dog was, or a full-size dog, because we changed our search criteria, L count puppies from L count. If it didn't see the image, it would deliver them all the same. But we specifically made it say puppies, and it delivered us what we wanted. After a long mathematical, I explain the math to you, but I know how it works. But, the long and short of it is that Google can see all the images. So it's very, very important that your descriptions be accurate as well as your images. When we talk about how to make searches, how to have a search render properly, I should say, and you've got an image inside of your pages, we want those images to be correct. If we call it a picture of Boyd on water skis, and it's really a picture of Boyd on a motorcycle, Google's going to know the difference and not give us as much credibility or credence if we're trying to deceive them. Recognize that it's Boyd, whether we call it Boyd on skis or Boyd on a motorcycle. Google's going to make that distinction and punish us accordingly. And I use the term punish. There's only reward and punishment inside of the search engine optimization world. So be very much aware of that. This slide's important before we really jump off into the craziness. But people need to know how to make changes. And the first place that I kind of go to is we need to change our code. And the code happens on the backside of the site. So if you're not a programmer, you don't need to freak out. I'll have a couple of examples of some good code in just a moment. But there's some simple changes that you can make. Everybody can go and see a website and see the code to the backside. If you just hit Control, I think U, it's going to pull up the code that sits behind any website. And so you're going to be able to see that. Now, unless you have admin access, of course, you can't go in and change it. If you want to see why somebody ranks for local, I'm actually sitting at Athena Coffee. And so we should go check all of their code to make sure that it says coffee shop in Salt Lake City or in Sandy or in Utah. We don't want them ranking for anything else in New York City or LA. We want it to be very, very specific, and you can put that code in that will actually help them render themselves in Salt Lake City. It's a local search is what it's called. So you can change your code, which is one of the best ways, the simplest ways to start to affect that. You can deal with your hosting provider. There's a lot of things a hosting provider can do, like provide speed is the answer to that particular question. It has to be on a tier 1 facility. If it's not, then you're making a couple of hops basically to get to the internet. Everything moves at the speed of light, but still, if it's making those tops, it's dependent upon the processor speed. But it's not that the electricity is not moving at the speed of light. It's that the processor speed can't keep up. And sometimes that slows things down, and that's going to punish you as much as anything. The Core Vitals update that Google just released, most of that whole update had to do with speed of the website or how it renders. And that is in relationship to the phone, and I've already covered that in previous sessions, but there's so much more demand for phones. Everybody carries their phone now that Google has felt this pressure to actually render things more quickly and render them because the speed of the phone is important. So you can have your colleagues help you, you can have programmers help you, you can add plugins. There's a lot of plugins that are beneficial. Certainly, plugins that crunch images or crush data, basically, in relationship to an image helps you with your optimization. And that adding a plugin that helps, your speed also relates to the hosting provider. Those two work together. If you have the appropriate plugins and your provider is fast, the site's going to render faster, and you're going to rank better overall. There's some other things that are related to linking, and we're going to talk about guest posts and some other stuff a little bit later on. But there's a lot of other methodologies that you can use to kind of get into it. So jumping right in, the tips or the tricks for the day are 39, 40, and 41 of our 70 step. And so we need to optimize videos and multimedia. And it's not just videos, but it's all of the multimedia that you have. And I use the word schema, and a lot of people don't know exactly what the schema is. The schema is basically another word for organization. It has to have organization to it. So creating a video sitemap is the answer to that. If you have a bunch of videos on your site, you should have a sitemap and submit that sitemap to Google. It says, these are all of my images, these are what they're all about, and this is where they all belong, and then submit that to Google. Every one of the search engines, if you go to Yahoo and Bing and AOL and all of them, they all have they're called webmaster tools. And every one of the, I think Google's the only one that's different. Theirs is involved in the G Suite and stuff, but all the others are just simply call them webmaster tools. If you go to Yahoo, it's going to be Yahoo/webmaster tools or whatever. And you can submit those sitemaps there and tell them that particular search engine how your structure looks, how your schema looks. You'll actually think of it that way. You need to optimize titles and descriptions of your categories. Now, we spoke about this last week a little tiny bit. So this is actually an article. So the search was actually how to become an SEO expert. And so this is what rendered. And category here is home. And then the category, first category becomes SEO articles, and then how to become the search engine or SEO expert. So it's broken into categories. And so by optimizing your title descriptions under that category search, it helps you get found, or helps those articles get found that people might be looking for. Steps 42 and 43 talk about internal linking strategy. And we're going to talk about this a little bit at length in just a moment. Not only is there a linking strategy as far as the World Wide Web goes, where with websites linking one to the other, but inside of the site, you can actually have linking strategies inside of your site. A good example may be if I have a page on my site, which I do, that talks about classes that I teach. So I've got a whole page that talks about classes that I teach. Then I write a blog about one of my classes. Let's say I'm teaching this really cool SEO class. If I write a blog about this cool SEO class, I should link that blog to the page that talks about classes that Jim teaches. So that's called an internal link. So by having all of those internal links, Google not only can crawl the site faster, it can connect all those dots, making an internal linking strategy more efficient and helps people find the information that they're after. And I've said this before, but by satisfying Google's needs for information, you need to understand what it is that you're doing. By making that as easy as possible for them, it gives your site a better ranking. We've spoken at length about schema, data and sitemaps. Well, having a complex sitemap that links categories together, like Jim's speeches and then Jim's cool speech about SEO, that's creating that link internally is going to help with your optimization. Giving credit to other high quality sites, and this is a goofy graph, but it's kind of easy to understand. So you talk about your site here, and then you link in and out to another site. That site, in theory, has just as much SEO credibility as yours because you're linking in and out of it. This one's the same way. It's linking in and out, and then it's got somebody else linking to it. So his site is actually smaller in value, but you can see that there's some credibility that surrounds it. Technically, that circle is that circle. Then there's sites like this that have a couple of links and just give links away. This one receives a couple of links, but just gives them away. So how those all work together is something that you need to consider. That's why we want to find out more about the links that we have on any given site. So this jumps ahead a little tiny bit to understanding keywords, but we're going to come back to links in just a second. So you need to understand what SEO keywords are. And here's a great graphic. This is actually a couple of blogs. This is off my actual blog page. And so here's blog number 1, and it's called Words Matter Online. So oops, I moved that over. It should be words matter. So the circle should be over here under words matter, not online. But so put words matter in the title, and then words matter in the first paragraph. Then throughout this article, I guarantee that there's about 2.5% keyword density. On this one, which is the very next blog, it was webhooks. And so I had webhooks. Under this particular graphic, there's an alt description that says words matter. Under this particular graphic, you can't really see it, it's a really cool graphic of Captain Hook. There's an alt description or meta description of that particular image is webhook. So here it's like how to SEO puzzle. Here my keyword is SEO puzzle. That, as you guessed by now, that graphic, that alt description is SEO puzzle. So you can see that I'm linking all of these things together. I'm putting the right amount of keyword density inside of all my articles. I mentioned 2.5%. There's a bunch of rules about how this works. And if you have 3.1% density, Google thinks that your keyword density is too high, and they'll actually punish you. They consider that spamming. So if you have too much density, you'll get punished. If you have not enough density, you'll be punished. It has to be just right. And 2 to 2.5 is about right. Actually, you can push it up a little bit to like 2.8, 2.9%. But if you go to 3, then you're going to get punished again. So that's just, and that's pretty much true of every page on the website. Not every page does it make sense to have that high of a density, but it should be in the description. It should have the keyword. And Boyd and I were talking before the class, it should be in the title page of that particular page, whatever that the most important keyword for that page is. So the long tail keywords tend to be this type of thing, and I should actually change that graphic, make it run out longer. But so if you do a search for the word shoes, that search gets, and I pulled this a couple of weeks ago, so I'm going from memory here, but shoes gets about 1.2 million searches. If you search for men's shoes, then I think that got about 700,000 searches. If you put in red Nike men's running shoes, that comes way down this long tail of keywords. And you might think that you want to rank for the word shoes if you own a shoe store, but this is getting 1.2 million searches, and that's getting 700,000 searches, and this one's getting about 50,000 searches. That's actually the money word right there. We actually want to run that out. 50,000 is about the target number of words or searches that we get per month for any particular keyword. And I'm actually working with Boyd on another project, and I think we're going to end up talking about keywords tonight. But if they gave me a bunch of keywords that are not relevant to their actual product, we want things that are only relevant to filtering water. So if you talk to me about the mechanics of how to filter water or something like that, I don't really care. If we're trying to sell water filtering system, that's what we care about. But mechanics, not so much. What the deliverable is at the end of it. So it's always an interesting conversation to have with somebody when they want to talk about keywords. I recently did a big optimization project for a mortgage company, and their keywords, and this is literally how it worked. I should maybe go to the next slide, I think. Okay, so we learned doing the keyword research for this mortgage company. They gave me like 20 words, and I put those 20 words into a tool. The tool in that case happened to be Google AdWords. And so I put in 20 AdWords. It spit back 8,000 potential keywords to me. And then I had them modify their keywords and give me 20 more. And it changed it to be 12,000 actual keywords. That's the possible number of keywords that Google recommended we look at. So we started with 20 and it expanded to 12,000. I'm going to tell you that mathematically, we eliminated a lot of those. So anything that was over 100,000 searches, the ones that got 1.2 million, 1.5 million searches, mathematically, we're never going to rank for that keyword. We just get rid of it. There was a bunch of keywords that were less than 10,000 searches a month. Some of those interesting words, and I was just outing the importance of long tail keywords, but most of the long tail keywords fall under that category of 10,000. But we have a group now between 100,000 and 10,000. Those are the money words. Those are the words that I like. I can't ignore everything below 10. So I have to go through the group that is below 10,000, and you go through those pretty quickly and say, that's good, that's good, that's good. That one, get rid of all those. Okay, you clean that up pretty nicely. I'm going to tell you that it's hard work. Every word between 100,000 and 10,000, when I was doing the keyword research, I went through and looked at that keyword. I looked at the keyword, I looked at how many searches it got. There's a price associated with it in the Google AdWords. And so if that word is worth $10, that means that it's a valuable word. If somebody's willing to spend a lot of money to own that word, or in the advertising list for that word. If that word is only worth like 90 cents, then that word's maybe a little bit less competitive and easier to get. So I look at the number of searches. I look at maybe if it's a seasonal word, then I look at the seasons that it happens in. I look at the competitiveness. I look at the dollar value. Google assigns the competitive score, 1 through 100. Nobody really knows what that means, but it tells us if it's a 0, then it's not competitive at all. If it's 100, it's very competitive. So we can run things through the Google search algorithm, and that's what I kind of recommend you guys start. And you can identify what keywords are. Once we started with 20 keywords, and it expanded out to about 12,000. Then it expanded back to about 20 keywords. That's what we ended up with, and it wanted to put in their site. The problem with them, and I'm going to explain this to you guys, is that she's a mortgage company. She is not a contractor. And she wanted desperately to be found for the same words a contractor would be found for. And I had to keep dragging her back to reality and saying, no, you're not a contractor. You write loans for houses. You're a mortgage banker. You're not a contractor. And the discrepancy for her was that her best clients happened to be contractors, people that would go in and build out a whole subdivision. That's what she wanted to be found for. And people that need loans aren't necessarily looking for a contractor. They're two separate entities. So I'd keep dragging her back to the table and saying, no, you're a mortgage banker. You're not a contractor. And we ended up with some words that made a great deal of sense. So that's kind of how you perform a keyword search. And I want to emphasize that all of these places that you can go find information about keywords. Google AdWords is probably the simplest. Google Trends, I almost never bring on a client without running them through Trends. Moz is important. Ahrefs is important. Google Search Console, which is AdWords. There's some other ones like SpyFu that have some free tools. I want to point out,
I've got a tool for you too. If you go into Facebook, they've now got a new tool in there that you can check the keywords that you can then search on them. And some of them are interesting that they don't show up as high on Google. When I check Google AdWords versus them. And yet when I put them into Google as the primary word, they come up really high. So it's a good thing.
What is the tool, Boyd?
Oh, it's in Facebook. Let me go look at it real quick and I'll tell you in a minute.
Okay, that's fine. So what I was starting to say is that there's a couple of services, and I pay big money for a monthly service. And unless you're in the industry, you probably don't want to spend that kind of money. It sounds like Boyd has another cool tool. And most of these, like Google AdWords, is a free tool. So if you can, if you have an AdWords account, go ahead and set one up. It's in the Google Search Console. And it looks like you're going to set up a campaign for yourself. You never have to give them any money, but they'll give you free information because they think you're setting up a Google AdWords campaign. So take it right to the point where they're asking for your credit card, then don't give them your credit card. It's absolutely the last thing that you want to do. So I'll keep moving on, and then you can let us know what your tool is called.
I'll do that. I'm just looking it up now.
No worries. So learn how to use the keywords in your optimization. So now we've got a keyword that's really cool. And so you use that in your page title. You use it in the title of the URL for that page. You use it in your H1 tag. Your H1 tag is the heading tag. So if I'm selling shoes, I should have shoes.com is my URL. My H1 tag, the headline for that tag should be shoes, or maybe in this case that we just discussed, maybe men's shoes. And then down in the H2 and 3, these are also subheadings. The H2 and the H3 tag should also have the word men's shoes in them. And then the alt description is an image. So the image has, at least one of the images on that page has to be named the same thing as that keyword. So that would be an image that's named shoes or men's shoes. Then related keywords or synonyms in your copy. So how many different ways can you say shoes? You can say running shoes. You can say jumping shoes. You can say wet shoes, dry shoes, whatever shoes you want. That relates to this last keyword, which is the LSI keyword. And I can't for the life of me, I was trying to remember just before we launched the presentation today. What LSI stands for, and I don't recall at this moment. But what it means is it means a synonym, excuse me. So if you have other ways to say what your keyword is, and you can incorporate those in the article, it helps you benefit. It won't punish you for using those. You don't get counted against that density that I was telling you about. So if you can say shoes, then that's counts against that demographic or that number that you're shooting for. If you can say those things that you put on your feet, that's another way to say shoe, but you're not going to get punished for calling it those things you put on your feet. So that's a terrible example. You get the point. Oh, what'd you find, Boyd?
I can't find it on here now. I was in Facebook the other day and I stumbled across it and I said, wow, this is cool. And took a couple of the long tail keywords and that they said, and I looked at them over under the same keyword search, and it didn't come up. And
yes, so be aware of that there's multiple places to search. And the thing that's interesting, Boyd is looking for, what he was talking about, it's something that might rank really, really high on a Google search engine search would rank differently on a social media search. So the number of searches that it gets on Google versus the number of searches it gets on Facebook are going to be entirely different. And what you do with that information are entirely different. It can be completely the adverse. It can rank really, really high on Facebook and be really, really poor on Google. It might not be a good word on Google.
Well, go ahead. Finish.
I was going to say, you need to run both of those analysis and figure out what's the best. The other thing I mentioned is Google Trends. Always check Google Trends. That's another free tool from Google. And, check your Google Trends and you can compare. You can only put 5 words in there at a time, but you can compare shoes against men's running shoes and men's red shoes. And that's a good place to check and see what kind of search volumes are getting across the board. So now we're to my favorite part of optimization. We're going to talk about link building for a couple minutes. So 48, 49, 50 all have to do with link building. And so what link building is it's creating a link that goes from, so I'm going to jump ahead here for 1 second. This is a great graphic of link building. So it's taking a website, let's just say this website is in Australia. And this is a guy that is a sheep farmer. And so he takes a page of his where he talks about his wool, and he drives this link deep into the site of a company in Salt Lake City that owns sweaters or makes sweaters. And he talks about the way they weave and dye their wool and beat their wool and all that stuff. This is an inbound link from an outside source or a link all over the world. This is a perfect graphic of how link building is supposed to work. you can see that they don't all go from home page to home page. You can see that they go to relevant content. This actually has relevant content about sheep and about sheep herding and about wool. And then you're driving that deep into the sweater website. You're driving it to a relevant information. And when I say relevant information, it gets kind of out of control. It's content that you're driving it to. You have the same keyword density. If you're talking about wool here, we should talk about wool here. If you have a graphic included in this, then it should have an alt description of that graphic that includes wool. And it makes a difference whether it's just text that's imported, or whether it's a PDF. Google can certainly read PDFs to get more value for I want to call it virgin text, where you put that text in yourself. Anytime there's automation involved, or you're taking a PDF and trying to get credibility for something that's automated and creating that PDF, or that PDF exists across multiple platforms, you don't get as much credibility as if you put the copy in yourself. Anything that looks original or hand done, straight HTML website will rank better than a website that was generated or created with code. Let me go back up here a little bit. So that's the nuts and bolts of kind of how link building works. There's black hat and white hat link building. So black hat, you can see that you have non-relevant content. I'm going to drive that home. Sites that have non-relevant content, there's no point in getting a link from it. I've told a story before, and it's not a great story, but I'll tell it anyway. I had a website that was for an addiction clinic. We built the website. We built everything perfect. We had the site, we just released it, and it was only a couple of weeks old, and it was starting to rank. And I was talking to the owner and said, it's time for us to get some links, drive some links to this place. And she said, okay, that's great. The next day she went to lunch with one of her buddies, and she said, oh yeah, my web developers going to give me some links. And her friend said, oh, links, I can get you some links. How many do you want? And she said, I don't know, 200 or 300. And so her friend went off to wherever she went off to, and I honestly don't know where she went to. She knew somebody that knew somebody. And next thing I know, I'm pulling up a link search on their site. They had 200 links. And I'm going, that's great. Where did they come from? And I start to look at the links and start following back. They're coming from porn sites. But she has a site about addiction and helping people and overcoming, trials and tribulations. And there are links coming from a porn site. The one has nothing to do with the other. And so we got crushed. It took me months and months and months to disavow those links and get all of those links turned off. And it's a laborious process. How do you get rid of bad links? Well, there's a graphic here in just a minute that I'm going to show you some of that. It's much harder work, but I need to keep going. So link building is horrifically important. Having relevant information is important. Does it come from a site that's standard HTML? All of these things are important. Is the content relevant? Does it come from an EDU, which is a government school, or that has a different value than just a straight up website or a .ru, which is a Russian site. You can see that if you're a law firm and you got a link from a .edu, like some law school, that would have much more value to you than if it just came from a .ru or a .ie or whatever. But where they come from are very, very important as well. How they are structured and where the pages that they land on are all very, very important. Where are they coming from? This is that graphic that I showed you earlier, and how they're landing. They go to deep pages. Do they all just go to the home page? It all matters to me, and we're very, very specific. When we put 100 links on a site, we determine which page it's going to go to inside that site. We have to drive a relevant article to it. When we create links, I have 125 websites all over the world, and they're all in different hosting environments. They're all paid for with a different credit card. They're all 192 pages big. They all have 192 different categories. So there's just about not anything that I can't drive a link to. And all of my sites are considered authoritative by Google because we are at least 13 years old or older, and they're all massive. They all look like they were written in HTML, and I can tell you a great story why they're not really HTML, but they look like HTML to Google. So that's really, really important. And all of those things play into good optimization and good link building. It's just straight up craziness when you start to think about how out of control it can get. The thing that I need to drive home real quick is that Larry and Sergey Brin, the founders of Google, they made a decision real early on that inbound links were the best methodology to rank a website. But at that point, MSN and AOL were using an algorithm that popularity was the most important aspect of a site. And these guys made the decision, we're going to use link building as the measurement of value. And it's panned out. And of course, Google has exploded, controls 90% of the market. They make all their money now from paid advertising, but that is what it is. The whole algorithm based on link building. And that's value of one site, sending clients away to another site to consume more value or more understanding. So you need to understand link profile and density, and remove the bad links. Like I told you, removing a bad link is horrifically painful and laborious process. There's a quick graphic that talks about how you can do that. You have to contact the site owner first, then request information and request that he move it. Then if that guy's non-responsive, you can go to a tool called the disavow tool that exists inside of Google and ultimately get that removed. Here's my last one that seemed kind of out of place, but mathematically it worked. This was how to optimize a logo for local SEO. This is the code inside of the description from Mayer's dental surgeons. And all they did is in the alt, they added Tampa, Florida inside of the brackets. And it has to live inside the brackets. If it says Tampa, Florida, that's all you do to create a local search and make it work. So real quickly, we're getting out of time. This is my tip of the day: content, 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 and fresh content. This is an actual client of mine. We're heading towards the registrations period for the insurance. He's an insurance agent. About a month ago, we do one blog a month, kind of in the slow season, which would be January through July. Well, we've kicked it up now. We're doing one blog a week. You can see that there's fresh content. We did one in August, the 8th, and then the 16th. I've got 2 more in the hopper ready to go. I've got my copywriters working on them. These all meet the criteria that I told you, with the right number of keywords, the right number of words, and now we're pounding those out as fast as possible. He's also included with his link building strategy. He's probably going to add about 400 links a month now through December, and then we'll let those kind of dissipate a little bit. But content, fresh content in particular, is the way to go. And you can see that there's some nice articles that are going on here with all of that. Search engine optimization, it's sometimes hard work, it's sometimes repetitive, sometimes laborious, but always pays off. So, I've often said that I think of my world as circles within circles. It happens to be hard work within hard work. And it does look a little bit repetitive with these guys here, but it does pay off in the end. So pay attention to the details and get everything taken care of. It's a process. You need to measure, adjust, and then remeasure. So we'd disappointed if you measure the first time and you don't get the results. You tweak something and then test it again, measure it again. And that's a process that we go through. As soon as you think you have it, and Google's going to change things on you. So that's, welcome to my world. I laugh with my friends and say, I wake up every morning wondering what Google did to me last night, because they changed their algorithms as many as 5 to 7 times a day. So they're always making tweaks. They have to keep the internet fresh. Okay, here's your free stuff for the day. Backlink checker. And it is listed on our site for $17, but just for the next week, it is 1 cent. You can buy this. It's an application called Backlink Checker, and it will tell you about all the backlinks on your site. I continue to use this site. It's a site called SEO in 360. It's about doing it yourself SEO, and there's last count, it was well over 100 different tools. There's some books on there. There's programs like this one. It's just a program you can download to your computer, and I couldn't make it 100% free because it's a PayPal account, and PayPal requires that I charge something for it, so I'm charging 1 cent. But you can go ahead and buy that on the website, and I've adjusted the price accordingly. So please go check it out. If you get into this SEO thing and decide that it's a little bit too much work, there's actually some programs there that you can buy, lifetime membership and annual memberships and that sort of thing. So please go to SEO in 360 and just peruse the number of products there, and you're going to go, oh my gosh, I didn't think about this. Oh my gosh, I didn't think about this. And you're going to figure it all out. My quote of the day is from a guy named Matt Cutts. And I know I'm over time, but I'm being quick.
You're fine. You're fine.
Okay. Matt Cutts is like the SEO guru of the world. He worked for Google for years and years and years. And every time he would spout some information, all of us SEO guys would go crazy. What did he mean when he said that? And we would dissect and change it, everything that he actually said to give you an idea of the caliber of individual that he is. He worked for Google for many, many years, and the federal government, there was the debacle called Obamacare or something like that. They hired Matt Cutts to fix it. And so he's the guy that got in there, got the website working, got all of that. And then the idea was that he was going to go back to Google when he was done. And then the government is obviously paying him so much money that he elected not to go back. This quote is from him, and it's several years old. But it's one thing that sticks in my brain all the time. And I spoke to you about my link building strategy. That's just one of many link building strategies that we deploy based on budget and a variety of different things. But he made the statement that the objective is not to make your links look natural. The objective is to have your links actually be natural. So let that sink in for a second. It's not to trick Google into making them look natural, it's to actually have them be natural. So when we do things like we set up all these websites to drive links from, we didn't put them all at one hosting provider and under one URL, just extensions of the same URL. We broke all 125 of them into different hosting environments, different countries. I mean, they're all over the place. And then we drive links from them, and they look very natural because they are in fact natural links. We don't overload one page, for example, with too many links, outbound links. We have an article written for each set of link, each one link. We have a unique article for it. So they all are natural, and it's a lot of work. It is off. Our clients rank very, very well. Okay, that's all I've got for today. I would like to thank you guys for showing up, and I'm sorry I ran a second over. I do want you guys to go to my Facebook page, which is E2 Total Solutions, and please leave me a review. I need some more Facebook reviews, so if you'll go in there and leave me a review, I'd really appreciate it. And that is all I've got for today.
Well, cool. And I wanted to tell people about next week. Jim and I are going to be doing a class, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that it's going to be all about writing blogs, and then how to writing them the right way so that they work with your SEO. But then I'm going to be talking about how to optimize them on the social media to make them so that you're driving traffic into those blogs as well. So it's another way of getting people to your website. So it's not only just SEO driving them there, it's social media driving them with those same articles. And we'll talk about that in depth next week. That'll be 2 o'clock. If you want to see what's the upcoming ones that we're going to be talking about, you'll see the next 3 or 4 ones that are coming up. And so we've got one Jim's next one in this series will be coming up in 2 weeks on the 1st of September. And then I've got one that we're going to talk about, and it's utilizing low-end tools like your cell phone to create videos, and how to make them so that they work for social media and even for YouTube. One of the big companies that I was talking to the other day, they were saying that they have hundreds of thousands of people that follow them, and they don't use a professional camera at all. It's all done on cell phones. And people are saying, well, geez, these look like they're professional things. And they said, well, we just learned how to do these things ourselves. So I'm going to teach that. I do a lot of those myself. Sometimes you can tell that it's me just doing that. And sometimes you look at it and go, wow, okay, that looks professionally done, but it's not. So that's what we want to talk about that'll be in 3 weeks. So, but anyway, go to bpmedia.com/seminars with an S on the end, and you'll see all of the upcoming things that we're going to be doing. So have a lot of things here, Jim. I have people saying great information. I'll definitely give you a review. Looking forward to your next seminars for both of you. Thanks a lot. So
Thanks.
thank you.
Thanks, everyone. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, everyone.